In a quiet village nestled between rolling hills and whispering forests, there stood an old library that nobody visited anymore. Its stone walls were covered in ivy, and its tall windows hadn't been cleaned in decades. Most people had forgotten it existed. But 12-year-old Maya knew about it. She passed by it every day on her way home from school, always curious about what lay behind those heavy oak doors. One autumn evening, as golden leaves danced through the air, Maya noticed something different. A soft, warm light glowed from one of the upper windows. She had never seen any light in the library before. Her curiosity pulled her toward the entrance. The door, which she had always assumed was locked, opened with a gentle push, as if it had been waiting for her. Inside, the air smelled of old paper and something sweet, like vanilla and honey mixed together. Tall bookshelves stretched toward the ceiling, creating corridors of knowledge that seemed to go on forever. "Maya," called out softly. Her voice echoed through the vast space, but there was no reply. She walked deeper into the library, running her fingers along the spines of ancient books. Some titles she could read: Tales of Distant Shores, The Language of Stars, Recipes for Impossible Dreams. Others were written in languages she didn't recognize, their letters shimmering and shifting as she looked at them. At the center of the library stood a grand spiral staircase made of dark wood, its railings carved with intricate patterns of moons and stars. The warm light she had seen from outside seemed to be coming from somewhere above. Maya began to climb. With each step, she felt lighter, as if the usual weight of her worries was being left behind. She had been stressed about a math test, anxious about making friends at her new school, worried about her grandmother who had been ill. But here, in this magical space between the shelves, those concerns seemed to float away like autumn leaves on a gentle breeze. At the top of the staircase, she found a cozy reading room. A fire crackled in a stone fireplace, though there was no smoke. Comfortable armchairs sat arranged in a circle, and in the center was a small table with a single book resting on it. The book was bound in deep blue leather, and its cover showed a silver tree with branches that seemed to move in an invisible wind. There was no title. Maya sat down in one of the armchairs and opened the book. The pages were blank at first, but as she watched, words began to appear, written in elegant handwriting. "Welcome, Maya. This is your story. Every person who enters this library finds their own tale waiting for them. You may read it, or you may write it." Maya blinked in surprise. How did the book know her name? She turned the page, and more words appeared. Once upon a time, there was a girl who felt like she didn't quite belong anywhere. She had moved to a new town, started at a new school, and everything felt unfamiliar and strange. She missed her old friends and her old life. Maya's heart tightened. This was her story, her real story. She kept reading. The words described her first day at the new school, how she had sat alone at lunch, how she had struggled to understand the different way the teachers here explained things. But then the story began to change, showing her things she hadn't noticed. There was a girl named Sophie who had smiled at her in the hallway. Maya had been too nervous to smile back. There was a boy named James who had the same book in his backpack that Maya loved, but she had never mentioned it. There was a teacher, Miss Rodriguez, who had noticed Maya's excellent drawing in the margins of her notebook and had meant to say something encouraging, but got distracted. The story showed her all the small moments of connection she had missed because she was too wrapped up in her own loneliness. Maya felt tears prickling her eyes, but they weren't sad tears. They were tears of recognition, of understanding. She turned another page, and the handwriting changed. Now it was asking her a question. Below the question was a blank space, and beside the book, a fountain pen had appeared, its ink shimmering like starlight. Maya picked up the pen. It felt warm in her hand, alive somehow. She thought for a moment, then began to write. The next day, Maya smiled back at Sophie in the hallway. She took a deep breath and asked if she could sit with her at lunch. Sophie said yes, and they discovered they both loved the same books, the same movies, and they both had grandmothers they worried about. James joined them, and they talked about the adventure novel they were all reading. Miss Rodriguez stopped by their table and told Maya she had a real talent for art. As she finished writing, the words glowed on the page, then slowly faded. But she could still see them, like they had been absorbed into the paper itself, becoming part of the book's permanent story. A warm feeling spread through Maya's chest. She realized something important. Her story wasn't finished yet. It was still being written, and she had more control over it than she thought. She stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the village looked different now. The streetlights glowed like fallen stars, and she could see her own house in the distance, warm and welcoming. A soft voice spoke behind her. Maya turned to see an elderly woman with kind eyes and silver hair pulled back in a bun. She wore a cardigan covered in pins, shaped like books and stars. Maya asked. I'm one of them. This library has many librarians across many times. The library holds all stories, past, present, and future. But the future stories are special. They're not fixed. They're like clay waiting to be shaped. That depends on you. The library can show you possibilities, help you see things more clearly, remind you of your own strength. But you have to live the story. Maya nodded slowly. Now you go home, Eleanor said, but you can return whenever you need to. The library will always be here for you. Eleanor walked Maya back down the spiral staircase. As they reached the bottom, she handed Maya a small silver bookmark shaped like a leaf. To remember, Eleanor said. Maya took it gratefully and slipped it into her pocket. As she walked toward the door, she looked back at the endless shelves of books. What? She asked. Some are. Some are stories yet to be claimed. Some are dreams waiting to be dreamed. The library is infinite in its own way. Maya stepped out into the cool evening air. When she turned back, the library looked old and quiet again, but now she could see the magic in it. The way the ivy seemed to protect rather than overtake. The way the stones held centuries of wisdom. She walked home slowly, her hand touching the silver bookmark in her pocket. She thought about tomorrow, about finding Sophie in the hallway, about smiling, about speaking up, about writing her own story with courage and hope. That night, Maya slept deeply and peacefully. She dreamed of endless libraries and books that wrote themselves, and spiral staircases that led to infinite possibilities. She dreamed of friendship and belonging and the quiet power of choosing your own path. And when she woke up the next morning, she got ready for school with a new feeling in her heart. Not quite confidence yet, but something close, hope, curiosity, a sense that the story wasn't over, that perhaps the best chapters were still ahead. She reached into her pocket and felt the silver bookmark, solid and real. It hadn't been a dream after all. Maya smiled to herself as she headed out the door. She had a story to write, and she was ready to begin.